fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
What's up, Salt Strong Nation? Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back again, and we've got the top 5 saltwater fishing lies, the things that we are told or led to believe as we go through this journey of becoming better anglers. And this is not just for newbies. This is not for any particular person, because we've heard this, all these different ones across the board. And we personally believe, before we go into this, every one of these at one point. So know that you are not alone if you kind of fell for any of these. And we'll briefly just talk about why these are lies and not true. And so it's if you're listening, Joe Simons and Luke Simons here.
Yep, here to chat about this. Yeah, we all have fallen for probably, I have to imagine everybody's fallen for all of them at some point. Some of them are probably still falling for it. And that's why I think this video will help save a good amount of people a lot of money. And just as important, if not more important, a lot of frustration on doing things the hard way. So which one do you want to hit up first?
Let's get into it. This is kind of a twofer. It's that live bait and fluorocarbon are best, or that you have to use live bait and or fluorocarbon both together or individually to have success out there. We hear it constantly. We're seeing it in our comments on YouTube, and you've now done a ton of testing proving that fluorocarbon is not only not needed, and in many cases a waste of money, not always, but in some cases. And you certainly don't need live bait. I think we've kind of proven that point. But talk about each one of these.
Yeah, I'll start with fluorocarbon because this is the one that I fell for the longest time. I was literally at tournament fishing, and if I was like going through all my tackle the night before the tournament, and I had to wake up at 5 a.m. and I saw that I'm low on my fluoro, I was using mostly 20 pound or 25. And if I saw it was low, I'm like literally going and searching to the local tackle stores, finding whoever's open. Like I literally remember having to do that the evening before tournament because I was afraid that I'd be out of fluoro for the tournament. And I truly did believe, I didn't believe that it was invisible, right? Nothing's invisible underwater, but I truly did believe that it was stronger and more abrasion resistant than mono, because the marketing kind of alludes to it without actually saying it. And I didn't start seeing the light until I built a testing assembly so that I was actually going to prove to our members, so social members, we actually do testing. We don't accept sponsorships from any companies. And as in our early courses, I was recommending fluoro because that was kind of like what everybody says. And I built this assembly to prove how much better fluoro was than mono for abrasion resistance. And I have sandpaper that does like a saw pattern, kind of like a snook shaking its head. I was trying to mimic that. And then I also built it was a dowel, so you can twist the dowel and kind of mimic like line wrapping around a dock piling. And for both situations, fluorocarbon got crushed by mono. And the first time I saw it, I thought my assembly was bad. Like I actually tested it to make sure everything was good, but I thought I did something wrong. So I retied it. And I mean, I'm talking, it was a 20 pound mono versus a 20 pound fluoro. So I saw that mono was beating fluoro every time. And I literally still didn't believe it. And then I looked at the diameter. So the actual diameter of a 20 pound mono is thicker than a 20 pound fluoro. So, okay, maybe it's the diameter difference. So I then put a 15 pound mono against the 20 pound fluoro. And this is regular monofilament. This isn't even like the expensive leader material. This is just regular 400 yard spool. And still in that case, the mono won. So the 15 pound mono, which is slightly thinner than the 20 pound fluoro, still beat the fluoro. So long story short, I haven't used fluoro in like 3 years, and I'm catching just as many, if not more, quantities and quality fish than ever before, even when going down to the Keys with crystal clear water. So I literally do not use it, and I no longer recommend it because it is provably less abrasion resistant, and I have not seen a difference in the amount of strikes per hour that I get, regardless of water clarity.
Yeah, and so some anglers are like, oh, well, it's stronger. And that's not, Luke's proven that's not true either in terms of knot strength.
Well, not strength. So there's a caveat to that. If a 20 pound mono versus 20 pound fluoro, the knot strength is better with mono. But if you equate the diameters, the pulling power of fluoro is slightly better than mono. But again, the abrasion resistance when you equate the diameters is way better with mono. So
but no one equates the diameters. Or when most anglers go buy something, they don't look at the diameter. They look at the pound test.
Yep.
And so pound for pound, it's not stronger. It's less abrasion. And the other one's, oh, well, fish can't see it. Yes, they can. I'm not ever picking on anglers, but I was like, oh, well, what test have you done? Like, oh, I haven't, but they have. Like, well, show me a test that the companies have done. And we've called out the companies. A couple of them reached out to us. They still haven't produced tests showing that fluorocarbon is invisible. I can see it underwater. I assume a fish can as well. So I don't know, just anytime that, and this goes all the way back to knots, like just because your grandfather told you this is the strongest knot, unless you've tested it, you might not know it, because that's from our own experience, right, Luke? We had the wrong knot for the longest time until you really started like scientifically started testing it, and it absolutely changed everything. Now the other one,
the knot's a tangent, but that is important too. So if any, because I just trust, it's 100% knot, so that's the one I used for many years. But if anybody says that they have a 100% knot, that guarantees they have not tested it, because it is extremely challenging and extremely rare where a knot actually isn't the weak point, right? If you have a line and you contract that line, and that doesn't make the line weaker, then it's very rare. So if you want to see the knots, we have a whole article on that as well, with a ton of knot contests where you can see the top knots for line types and connection types.
Yep. And we went and bought, almost a $2,000 tester, contraption. I don't even know what it's called, but testing all the strength of these knots. So it wasn't just us guessing or doing it against a door handle. It was actually, with a little bit of science behind it. So the other one is live bait. And we're still number one, guys. We have 4 more to go. So live bait, that was something we believed for the longest time. We wouldn't even go fishing without a cast net and a live well full of something. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, again, I was a bass angler. I was a super bass addict, and that was all I did. I love bass fishing, and I would always use lures. And then caught my first snook when I was like 12 or so, and now I'm like super addicted to saltwater fishing, because you have snook, redfish, trout, flounder, different species. For whatever reason, I was great with lures with bass, and then I just thought I had to use live bait for inshore saltwater, because that's what everybody was doing. And so I never really even tried. Like, I literally just started getting cast nets, learning how to throw cast nets, how to catch bait, how to manage bait. And we struggled. We struggled for many years, and we'd have some great days, but mostly, mostly we just didn't have confidence. And the problem was that we spent all of our time on bait. Like, we would actually be out early morning, sometimes for an hour if it was tough catching bait, and that was the best hour of fishing. Like, had we been throwing top waters, during that sunrise time, we probably caught more and better fish than what we caught later on in the day with live bait. So, for obviously fishing guys use live bait. If you know where the fish are, like where the predators are, and you know where the bait is, it's hard to argue against live bait, right? Because if there's 10 fish in one spot and you throw live bait in there, you're going to catch more fish than if you're throwing lures. For weekend warriors, that's where it changes. The fish move around, right? Even if you fish every week, the fish are moving throughout the entire week. So you don't know exactly where the fish are, and the bait moves as well. So now you have 2 variables to worry about. And once you have the live bait, you can't move as fast. So you don't know if you're taking up a lot of time with live bait. And then once you have it, you can't move as fast, and you just lessen the odds of finding the good feeding zones. And as we've talked about, if you've been a listener for a while, you've heard about the 90-10 rule, which is at any given time, 90% of the feeding fish are in 10% of the water. And if you can't move as fast, you're not going to be able to find that 10% of the water nearly as often. And kind of my aha moment was when I moved over to the east side over in Melbourne, fishing the Indian River, and I now didn't have luxury of my dad's boat, and I had to. All I was a kayak, and I didn't have anywhere to put bait, so I guess I might as well go to my to a super fluke, and which I was great with bass on, and then throw that on the flats and try to find fish. And I just focused on finding the fish, and within literally a month, I was catching slams consistently with just one lure. And it all was down to the fact that I was spending my time and energy on finding the fish and using a lure that I trust. And I wasn't even worrying about the bait or how to manage it or slow myself down for it. So I think there's a lot of people out there that would actually be catching more fish if just kind of take the bait out of the equation and just focus on moving around and getting to see the signs of life, and then specifically cover water and just spend the most time in the best zones.
Well, that ties in with saltwater fishing line number 2, that just more time on the water is the answer. I see a lot of people in the Facebook groups and even some full-time guides say this. In some cases, it's true, but for a lot of newer anglers or people who are just struggling, more time is not just the answer. There's so many things you could do off the water, like our Smart Fishing Spots app, like going through the courses, even practicing your casting. Remember, Luke, when I became like the all-time best for me in terms of casting, remember, it was living in Winter Haven, and it was because I couldn't go fishing all the time, and I was in the backyard practicing all of the time. It would be like sending out your kid who's just started learning how to play golf and just telling them, hey, just the driving range where you're going to get better. Like, no, they're going to keep practicing horrible mechanics. It's not until you learn a little bit and maybe get a coach, right, and some training before it really makes sense to just go spend more time on the water, spend more time in the driving range. Same with batting practice, right? If your swing's horrible, batting practice is not the answer. You want to tweak that and get a coach first. So talk about that real quick, Luke.
Yeah. So when we first started getting pretty good at inshore fishing, it was summertime, and we knew that this was still in live bait time. We knew a general idea on where to catch bait, and then we would fish the top of the incoming, because that's what a lot of people said. And we finally had a handful of spots that were good for that time period, like for that tide cycle. And so we were doing well, but that was just for like a 2-month span, 2 or 3 month span. And once we got to fall and then winter, we kept going to those same spots, but the fish moved. And so we really struggled. And so we just we were practicing good mechanics for a specific season
for 2 months.
We just didn't have the, what's that?
For 2 months, basically.
Yeah, for 2 months. And we just didn't have the know-how to adjust that plan around, to adjust the priorities on what conditions to think about and to prioritize. We just weren't making the changes that would have put us on the fish. And so, yeah, it's kind of like like Joe said, going to golf. If you practice bad form, you actually can get worse. But if you don't adjust your form for important topics, like in fishing, is seasonality is a big deal. If you're not adjusting based on season, you're just not going to be consistent. And that's not something that you just learn by going out of the water more. It really requires some training. Obviously, after years of trial and error, you'll eventually figure most of it out, but it's just a whole lot easier to just get a coach and to get coached throughout the process of water starting to get cooler and warmer, pressure changes. Just the normal stuff that happens throughout the year, but happens at obviously at different times. So long story short, yeah, just get some sort of formalized coaching, and that's why we put together the Finding Spots Mastery course for Insider Club members to go from regardless of where they are, but even if they're very beginners, to go through the water temperature, how to decide the factors to think about based on the season, and then how to prioritize which spots are going to be holding the most fish. And just as importantly, which spots to totally avoid. It's very rare that there's like one spot that's good throughout all seasons. The tough part is deciding which ones are best for certain scenarios. And with the teaching, you can then look at a map, even if you're in an area that you've never fished before. This is where it becomes really powerful. You'll have the confidence to be able to know what the conditions are, right? Looking at the weather forecast, where the general area where you're going to be. And you can literally look at a satellite map and be able to identify the particular spots that are most likely going to be 90-10. Obviously, it's impossible to be perfect, but if you know the proper process based on the season and based on the changing weather, if you pick 6 spots based on the teachings that we have in that course, at least half of them are going to be good. And when you do that, it is very rare that you don't have a good day on the water.
Yep. And that's really the origin story of our Insider Club was trends, right? And every week we have Luke and the other coaches and even some guides are giving local trends. every Friday. And guess what? It changes every week. And that's why it's so important if you're a member, because I know you members are already doing it, but if you're a new member, or maybe you're joining today, if you're not a member, you should. I mean, definitely listen into that smart fishing game plan. It's every single Friday, and it's usually less than 10 minutes, right? That's kind of the promise, 10 minutes or less. You can listen to it on your phone. You could put it on your Bluetooth or on your radio on the way to the ramp or wherever you're fishing. And just that 10 minutes, you will know more than like 90% of all the other people hitting the water that day who were kind of lost and just hoping and praying they're back in the same spot they were last time. That's the trends is so critical. So let's keep going here. Saltwater fishing line number 3, that a boat will solve all your problems somehow.
Yeah, that is, I learned that the hard way as well, where, when I moved over to the Indian River, I didn't have a boat, and I started wade fishing, and I was going around Sebastian Inlet, and I started catching the biggest trout I've ever seen. The Indian River has a lot of big trout. And so I was starting to do some pretty good with trout. Then I got the kayak, and now I'm starting to catch slams because now I can start moving around, and I'm starting to read the water better. And then I was like, man, if only I had a boat, like think how much more fish I'm gonna be catching. So I took out my savings and bought a boat. I bought a Carolina skiff, my first ever boat. I was so pumped. And first day I took out, I was ready. I was so excited. I'm gonna go to the spots that I've been just tearing them up in my kayak. Got skunked. I caught nothing. And it was so defeating, where I spent this money. I had all of the hopes up and telling everybody how much I'm going to crush in this day, and caught nothing. And turns out, right, some boats have a lot of hole slaps. Some boats are better than others.
Talk about what a hole slap is for those that don't know.
Yeah. So hole slap is when water is hitting up against the side of the boat. For like any windy day, there's going to be some wind waves in the water. And if the boats, you can see some boats have like straight vertical sides. Some, it's like V-hole boats have a flat, the sides kind of go more of an angle. And when that wave angle is at the wrong, I should say at the perfectly wrong angle hitting the boat, it'll slap. And guess what can feel a hole slap very well? Fish, and especially the big fish. They feel that hole slap. They know that something bigger than them is close by, and they're gone.
And this is not why you're running, guys. This is the hole slap. Yeah, when you could literally be engine off, literally you could be floating and have the hole slaps. This is not something, because we talked to a lot of new members, and they're like, well, what's a hole slap? I've never even heard of this. And then when you kind of explain what it is, like, oh yeah, I have kind of heard or even felt that, right? And that's just one of many reasons. We're not trying to poo-poo on a boat. I think everyone should hopefully own a boat at some point in their life. That'd be awesome. But that's not the answer. We want to be clear, because so many people like you, like they finally get a kayak and they're like, oh man, if I only had a boat, I'd be catching 10 times more. And it kind of goes back to the last one. It's just not more time in the water. It's being able, once you dial the 90-10 in, then yeah, a boat does give you some other opportunities to go explore, to cover more ground, et cetera. So it's tough to argue with that, but it's not the answer if you haven't put a little time in studying and understanding fish behavior, understanding trends, or having an app or shortcuts like we offer to the Insider members. What else on the boat?
Well, I'll say the boat. I mean, it's really about that. Whether you're boat, kayak, or wading, they all have the pros and cons, and so all of them can work great. It's all about the angler's know-how. So the boat is great because you can move. It's bad because the fish can feel you much better. It's bigger, and you have to worry about the angle of the boat and the sides of the boat to the waves. A kayak can't travel quite as fast as the boat, but it's a whole lot smaller. The fish can't feel it as well, but you still have the same issue with hole slap. Same with paddleboards. I do a lot of paddleboard fishing. I have a surf style board that is super loud, that has really bad hole slap. And in most cases, when I had that small boat, when I had my best days, I would take the boat to a flat that looked good, and then I would get out and wade fish. So wade fishing, if you know how to pick good spots and you can get there by foot, the wade fishermen will most often catch the most and the biggest fish, because they're as silent as possible to the fish. So a lot of people think, oh, if I don't have a boat, I'm not going to catch anything. Totally false. So there's like Wader Dave is a great example. He's a member of ours. I fish with him a lot. A great guy. And he is constantly catching giant fish and constantly catching slams and 100% weight fishing. and just going from shore, not taking a boat to go to some secret remote spots. He's just really good at choosing spots that are accessible by foot and goes out there and catches fish. So yeah, don't feel that you don't have any chance to succeed if you don't have a boat or kayak. That's not true at all. If you pick the right spot, you're going to be catching more fish than the guys in boats and kayaks.
Yep, I completely agree. All right, number 4, saltwater fishing line number 4, that you should spend more time and money on your reel compared to your rod. Guilty.
Yeah. A lot of money involved with that mistake for me. As far as money loss, a lot of yard mowing money that went to the local tackle stores, because I was all about the reel. I would literally spend like however much I could barely afford on the reel, and then the rod was the afterthought. That was like the leftover money that I had, and then
I got $13 left, 13 to change. That'll be enough for a decent rod.
Yeah, and I was for many years, and because that's the focus, right? Like it just seems like even the combos, like combos at stores, it's really like, hey, here's the combo is referencing the reel as if the reel's the most important. And that's kind of I shouldn't say it's totally false. It's kind of more true with live bait, because the bait fish is doing the work, right? The rod, all you're doing is kind of heaving it out in a general area, and the bait fish will actually attract the fish. But for lures, if you want to get good at lures, the rod is by far the most important. By far, it's not even close. Because with lures, you now have to deliver with precision the lure to the right spot. Just as importantly, if not more importantly, you have to retrieve that lure and feel the strike and get the hook set. So now you're in charge of getting the strikes, whereas with live bait or cut bait, the bait's in charge. And so having that a good high performance rod is a total game changer for lures.
I would still argue,
great
though,
for live bait as well.
Yeah, I would still argue though with live bait and cut bait, because we're not against that, and we've certainly done some of that, and we'll continue to. But you still got to feel the fish, you still got to set that hook, and you still got to fight it. Like imagine even fighting bigger fish without a good rod as leverage. If you just had some crummy little ugly stick with a nice reel, the reel just brings line in and out. It's really only as good as your rod still at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, I mean, and good point. I like to use lures most. I still use live bait, but even when I'm using live bait, I use the same setups as my lures, because again, as Joe mentioned, it just has better feel of strikes. The hardest part is about getting that fish on. And once it's on, that's when the reel finally starts doing its work, and it's just providing drag. And another thing I didn't know as well for many years is that the drag setting should be only 25. It's like 20 to 30% of the weakest line strength. So if you're using, let's say, a 10-pound braid, which is what I use for a lot of my open water fishing, a 10-pound braid, all I need technically for the reel as far as drag is 2.5 pounds, plus or minus, like 2 to 3 pounds. That's nothing. Like a little kid's like Snoopy reel has 2 to 3 pounds of drag. And so again, having that rod to deliver the lure, feel the strike, get the hook set. Obviously, you need to have good line, and line is a big deal as well. Yep. As far as making sure you're not having a 30-pound line when you only need 10. You're going to really suffer on your casting. But yeah, so I go rod number 1, and then I think about my line, and then number 3 is the reel, as far as the priority that I now give myself.
That's good. All right. 5th and final saltwater fishing lie, that the fish in my area are different, or that my area is so different. And we've said it quite a few times in the past. A redfish is a redfish is a redfish. And we had Pat on our team. We've obviously fished all over the country. Pat on our team, he kind of gave us an irresistible offer. He was one of our members, and he had a dream about like joining the Salt Strong, team, if you will, like full time, to be a coach. And he said, guys, like I've always wanted to go live in an RV, and if you'll hire me, I'll get in my RV and I'll start in Texas and go all the way around the whole Gulf, all the way around Florida, and just fish in every city all the way up to North Virginia. And I'm just going to go prove that the same lures, the same setups, and even the same kind of systems and trends that he was using in Florida where he lived can work everywhere. And he did. He documented the whole thing. All of our members got to watch it. It's still out there. If you're a new member, you can go see it. And I mean, he was fishing in Virginia and he was catching fish. He was catching, remember his first stop was, I think it was in Texas, I believe, and caught a slam his first day. And he's like, holy smokes. And obviously it wasn't always that easy, but he was catching fish every single little place he stopped using the same things. And yes, there's certainly nuances. My in-laws are from Savannah. That's where my wife's from. We go see them and fish there. Savannah obviously has way different tides than Tampa Bay. There are certainly differences, but a redfish is still a redfish is a redfish. They still have the same wants and needs. They're still feeding on similar type of things. They're still following the tides the same way. They still become very predictable when you know what to look for and you know the trends, but they're really not all that different.
Yeah, they'll still position in the same types of spots based on like current flow, for example. They're going to be holding in the eddies in most cases. Sometimes they're up front if the water's not too strong. But yeah, it was. I remember when we first started Salt Strong, we had the inshore slammer course. That was our first course, and it was really designed for Florida fishermen, and because that was where we did all of our testing. And some Texas people somehow find it. I started seeing some Texas buyers come in. I was remember being like so nervous, like, oh my gosh, like what if they don't like it? And turns out the same tactics that were designed for Florida were working great in Texas as well. And I just remember being just kind of surprised. Like I knew that fish should be the same, but I didn't have the kind of concrete evidence where this recipe from Florida transposed to Texas worked just the same. And then same thing for the people in the Carolinas, right? Same thing. Just have to, the current flow is a bigger deal in some areas versus others, but the same general strategies as far as boat positioning and then knowing where those fish are going to be specifically positioned to increase your odds. It's all the same. And whether you're using a paddle tail, like a little small 3-inch, bait fish imitation for areas like down in Tampa, they'll think it's a mullet. And then for up in the Carolinas, they'll think the same thing as a mud minnow. Right? There's almost in all situations, there's going to be some 3-inch bait fish, and the paddle tail, the fish will just think it's whatever the local prey is. It's
most of them are reacting anyways. They're not like sitting there staring. Hey, Bob, is that a mud minnow? I mean, it's the same reason a gold spoon doesn't look like anything catches redfish in every one of those states.
Yeah, it's just surprising how transferable it all is, and how important it is to have that core foundation where, again, you know what the season is, you know what the weather patterns are doing, and you can look at a map and know that the tide cycle the day you're fishing, and look at a map and say, okay, these 4 spots are going to be good in the morning. These will be good in the mid morning, and then in the afternoon I'm going to go to these. And if you have that foundation, when you pick those 4 spots in like 5 minutes of analysis, you're going to be catching some fish. And again, that's been really the coolest thing as we've just gone on with this club and started fishing more anglers and testing it ourselves. But it's been really cool to see how true that core foundational knowledge actually is.
Yep. Cool. Well, that was it, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you're a current insider member, make sure to get in the community. A lot of new things going on here this month. And I've got new tackle tester stuff coming up soon. I love seeing all the reports from the LeBron's mulligan. That's so far really good. Everyone seems to love it. So thank you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, our members, we now have a tackle tester program where we give them a new tackle to sample every single month and give us feedback on, hey, do we love it? Is it working here? Is it not working here? Et cetera. Been really, really cool. So please make sure to be in the community and post your reports in there. And if you're not a member, come join us today. We will help you solve all 5 of these. Once again, we suffered through all 5 of them at different times in our fishing journey. And we would love to give you shortcuts. The Smart Fishing Spot app is just one of many things that we do for our members. At the end of the day, it's all about that 90-10 zone. And that's a combination of trends, the localized fishing reports, and the smart fishing game plans that we're doing every single week. Just incredibly helpful. It's really everything Luke and I wished was around when we were doing that transition from bass fishing to inshore saltwater fishing. We're like, man, why hasn't anyone created something like this? So we're getting to live through and really build everything that we just wish was around, and it's now incredibly helpful for us still, even as we continue to get better every year. But I think what I love about fishing is just always the learning game, right? I hope at 65 we're still learning and super curious and trying new things. It's so cool.
Yeah, because that's the good thing about saltwater fishing. I still appreciate freshwater, but saltwater, there's just more species where okay, I understand redfish now. Now I'm going to go to snook and then trout and then flounder. And then you have the triple tail, this tarpon, the seasonality stuff. Like just the other day, we were go out and doing some testing with snapper and doing light bait versus fake shrimp. And It's just really cool to see how the same types of lures can be applied in different situations and catch just a wide variety of species.
Yeah. Well, freshwater does have a lot. It's got, largemouth bass, and it's got lunkers and ditch pickles and bucket mouth. Oh, they're all the same. Yeah, you're right.
Right. You have a little variety. You get some speckled perch out there, but it's just nothing like saltwater. So
I agree.
I've been a total saltwater addict ever since that snook catch down in Marco.
Mm-hmm. Changed everything. All right, guys, appreciate y'all, and go to saltstrong.com to join in on the movement. 50,000 plus members over there, and we'd love for you to be one of them.
Pow! 'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was pain.